Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through the fitting of a Korniche bifold door step by step. And the first thing I notice about this door is that it comes assembled. In other words, you don't get a flat pack frame which you've got to bolt together and then hang the doors in. It's already there, comes packaged up, beautifully packaged up to save it getting damaged, and this is how it arrives at your door. Now, I fitted Korniche roof lanterns, so one thing I know about this company is that they really package everything and they think about what they're doing. And here we've got the box of bits. Everything we need to complete this door installation is in this box. Of course, apart from the glass and the beads. And look at this, you even get the shims in there. So I said it comes ready assembled, but you can actually get it in kit form. If you've got access difficulties, you can't get it through the house or something like that, you can request it in kit form. We're going to move on and begin here with the general assembly. Now, this is just a general point about unwrapping. If you're using a knife, be very careful, because the one thing you don't want to do is be scratching that frame. Now, before we put the door in, we're just going to look at the details on the opening. We've measured the opening, and always measure it in 3 places, bottom, top and the middle. Allow yourself 10 millimeters on that opening so that the frame has got 10 millimeters, 5 millimeters either side. You can leave a little bit more than that if you're nervous, but that kind of margin. One of the big problems that you get with all kinds of patio doors, not just bifolds but all kinds, is that people want a level access. You need to think about that, because the rainwater under the wrong conditions can drive in underneath the door if you've got a bit of a flood out there. So one thing that people do is put a drain all the way along the front, which is a very good idea. Take that rainwater away. But something I do, I get myself a bit of wide damp-proof course. Now, if any rain did drive in there, it's not going to climb that gap and come in here. Now, if you didn't have that, the rain can drive in here, it can start to soak the floor, and you'll see a little damp patch appear here. Just take care of this detail, because if you don't, it's a very difficult thing to fix afterwards. This room is not prepared at the moment. There's still quite a bit of work to do on it, but you can see that eventually it will all be plastered out, and we don't want any damp spots. That's it, lovely. To me. Okay, all right there? So once we get this level and squared up, we need fixings in the bottom, fixings in the top to pin it to this steel beam, and also fixings in the end to the walls. If you feel underside, you'll feel there's little weep holes. Yeah. So those weep holes have got to be off the ground, because if you block those up,
it's not going to be able to flow out.
It starts to flood out. Yeah. So
gotcha.
let's stick another 2 under there. A couple of folding wedges. They adjust. Once we get all this packed up in position, we're then going to put a dry pack of sand and cement underneath it, which will hold it perfectly in place. But if you just go and pug it up with sand and cement, the whole thing shrinks slightly, sags, and you know, you're fighting all the time.
Okay, mate. Yeah, what's that left us?
I think we're fine. I think what we've got there is about 3 mil.
Yeah, I was about to say 3 mil. I'm going to go 4.
Right, let me find the measure first. Spot on 104 now. 10 mil we came up.
Yep.
Happy with that?
Yep.
I might have to get a jemmy.
Right on the button.
Fix the ends. Once we fix the ends, then we'll chock up and down in the middle. Very often when you get these handles, a little bit of wobble, but you can feel here that there's no wobble. They just ooze quality. Right. There you go. That goes on there. Yeah, that's it. The rest of it, piece of cake.
Yeah, so basically you're going to work from that end that you've set, chase it out to the other end. Or you're going to set the other end first?
Yeah,
set one end, other end,
then
square it up.
Oh mate, that's spot on. Through the screw. So you can use a square to get itself roughly square, you know which way you're going then, but we're going to give it a final check with the cross diagonals, because if you get both diagonals exactly right, then the thing must be square. Do you know what, that's on 192, so if we take the slack out of it, That's it, 192, spot on. Might seem like a lot of fiddling around, you know, putting packers in and just moving it a millimetre here or there, but honestly, do it. Take your time doing it, because when you get it right, you can fix the whole thing in and you know it's going to be right forever. So I've used these top fixings to just lift it up and down and use the laser level so that they've got a line along the top. I mean, it makes it so much easier when you've got a laser level, because back in the day when we used to use a 6-foot level on this, and if you've got a door that's like 4 meters wide or something like that, you're never quite sure where your level is. So I do recommend a laser level for this job. So I've leveled the top in with a laser. Now I'm just going to level the ceiling with the same laser. So I've put it on the floor, got myself a bit of timber, I marked that up at the ends, and now all I've got to do is go along and make that adjustment up and down very slightly till we get it spot on. And then once I've done that, once I've put those packers in, I will then go and get some sand and cement, maybe a 4-to-1 mix of sand and cement, nice and dry, like a dry pack, and push that in. So in terms of putting packers in all the way along, work on something like 400 centres. It's in the instruction, 150 in from each end and then 400 after that. Oh, spot on. Had to happen. So again, with a laser line along the bottom, I can just mark up a piece of timber on one end and just check it all the way down so that I make sure that this track is not bent or distorted in any way. Actually, it's sitting perfectly straight, so that's all right, but there could be occasions when it's just pushed out of line slightly. We want a nice straight line, we want it level, and then these are going to glide beautifully. I'm just going to take this opportunity to point out something else about these doors which is really nice, and that's these ball bearing rollers. They've got actual ball races in them. They're stainless steel, and not only have we got the rollers going along the top, but we've got some in the track. What they've also done is put an articulating chariot in there which will actually follow the line, so if there was a slight distortion it would follow it rather than binding against it, which is really clever. That's rather like a train going along a track and it starts to go around a curve and the whole axle just adjusts to make sure that happens. So if there is any kind of distortion, it will glide through and it won't bind. This is probably about the best I've ever seen in a bifold. Look how easily that glides. And I know it hasn't got the glass in it at the moment, but when the glass goes in it, it's still going to be the smoothest ride that you've ever seen. Now when you put these screws in, it's important they go deep enough so that they clear the rollers. There's about, I'd say, there's a good 4 mil there to get through. So these have got a countersunk head, so they're going to be absolutely fine. So this screw had just about cleared those rollers. It probably left me a couple of mil, but I'm just thinking that's a little bit on the tight side, because once you get a bit of dirt debris falling into the tracks, you don't want it jamming up. So I'm just going to give it a little drill down and just increase the depth. So that should be plenty now.
So what are you doing? Again.
Now in order to make the fixing into this end here, I've got to remove this keep. And on the instructions it helpfully says you remove these screws, so I know what I'm doing. But of course if a traffic door isn't on the end, if it's in the middle, then you don't have to remove the keep. It's only because I'm trying to get the screws through the profile into the wall. One of the reasons there are a lot of screws is because this has got a very high level of security. They don't want people coming along and jamming the thing open. So you can see all the multi-point locking points that they give you on this, and that means that obviously if they didn't have this well screwed in, it would still be vulnerable. So one of the problems you get sometimes is that if you've got the keep screwed into these little plates at the back, as you take the keep off, all those drop down inside the channel, and then you are in trouble because you've got to take the frame out, you've got to lift them all back in, put a dob of silicone behind them or something like that. Whereas what they've done here is, you can see they've just cut these little keyhole holes so that they can pop them in, and then they just drop down and they're fixed. They're located in that position. They can't slide down any further. So that, I think, is really clever. So there will be people watching this who will say, why hasn't he got an electric screwdriver? Why doesn't he get the electric screwdriver out? Well, these are fine machine threads on here, and I need to feel them go in because it's so easy to cross thread it. Now, I've been looking forward to this bit, putting the glass in, but there's a few things that you need to do when you put the glass in, which will make a huge difference to the way your doors operate. So don't rush it. Now, thankfully, in this case, Korniche again been thinking of the installer, and they've put loads of labels on here to help you. Now, one thing they say is retain the bead order. So don't just go and take all the beads out, jumble them all up, and then you don't know where they go. So what I tend to do is one at a time, one panel at a time. I'll take the beads out, I'm going to lay the beads down in the order they go back in, put that glass in, then I carry on. Here we've got the Toe-in and Healing guide, which is very, very important, because what the Toe-in and Healing does is it braces each one of the frames. The glass acts, if you like, as a sort of structural brace on it, rather like if you had a ledged and braced door. And so it's very, very important that you get that glass in and you get it chopped up dead right so that it will hold that frame where it needs to be. So I'm going to get on and take these beads out. What we've got is a frame here which, if it was left on its own, could distort. We've got a sheet of glass, or two sheets of glass in here, which are completely rigid, so they won't distort. In that plane they are rigid. So when we open the door and the door's swung out into the fresh air, if you like, the mid-air, there could be a tendency for that frame to want to just drop down. So if it was a door, a piece of joinery, you'd be putting a brace, a diagonal brace across there, but obviously you don't do that on a glass door. So what we do is we use the glass as a diagonal brace. So we've got it in the corner there, we've put a packer in both sides there, and now we go up to the opposite corner and we brace the frame there, and that kind of just lifts that frame up on that piece of glass, so that the force, if you like, the support is going right down diagonally from one corner to the other. And that's the key to Toe-in and Healing. Now, this is a unique glazing bead. It's really very clever. They've put this piece of polyamide in here, which is the same materials on the thermal break, clipped into this aluminium profile, and you can see that that flexes. Now, what that does is when you put it in and you can feel it sort of snapping, click into place, it's grabbing in there, it's flexing slightly, and it's going in, and once it's in, it's in. And the only way you're going to get it out without damaging it is with this special deglazing tool. Now, the deglazing tool slips in there, and what you do is you push that polyamide plastic, if you like, away, and that allows it to start coming out, and then the whole thing just kind of unzips from there. But without that tool, you really are going to struggle to get that out. But it's a very, very good system because you don't get that black rubber line either. You've got a much nicer aluminium finish with just a thin piece of rubber there. So rather than having to push all that gasket in, and it never looks that great, quite honestly, this is probably, apart from the fact they patented it, this is the future. That is joy. You know, I've struggled with these things sometimes. Sometimes you get a little mallet out on them and you're pushing them and they don't seem to go. That is beautiful. Now, it's always best if you can do this job with two people, but I'm Billy No Mates today, and what I would say is I did have an occasion once where I thought the piece of glass was in, and then a gust of wind came along and blew the glass, and I just about caught it. So don't do that. Make sure you've got somebody holding it if you walk away, because even when you've got the packers in, if it's a windy day like it is today, it's surprising how much force that wind can put on a piece of glass. Probably just a good idea to keep this packer just slightly away from your drainage hole, because if any water did get down through that gasket over the years, it'd only be a tiny bit, but it would collect in there and it would run under those spaces and come out the little weep holes here. So if you just clear it like that, you'll be fine. Now, there may come a time when you want to remove the glass for some reason or another. Either it's been damaged or because the towing and healing isn't quite right and you want to make a minor adjustment. Well, on an ordinary window, you'd have to pick out the gasket, maybe with a pair of long nose pliers, and then remove it all. And then quite often you find you have to put new gasket in because it's damaged removing it. With this beading system, you don't need to worry about that. You can take the glass out very quickly indeed using this special deglazing tool. And if you compare that with having to push those gaskets in, it saves a lot of time and it also looks a lot neater. I mean, you've got a real high-end finished aluminium trim here rather than a piece of rubber going around there. And of course, the other advantage of having that aluminium bead instead of a rubber gasket is you haven't got the problem with shrinking. Sometimes installers have to go back and re-gasket because the old gasket has just shrunk. Now, when you're doing this, always take out the side beads first and then the bottom and top. Put the beads in the order they came out in so you know which one's left, which one's right, and get somebody to support that glass. And then when you go to put it back in, you simply do what we did before. You position that in place and it's as simple as that. So another really good feature of these Korniche doors is the fact that you've got these integrated trickle vents. You don't need to add a head, a frame extender above the door in order to get the trickle vents. They actually can fit within the frame themselves, which obviously saves a bit of space and makes the doors look a bit more streamlined, but it also saves you a bit of money. So now the doors are in and they're fully operational, I just want to point out a couple of features with the handles, because you might think, well, a handle's a handle, but in actual fact these are suited. They offer a really high-end specification, and because they're suited, it means that whatever finish you choose for your traffic door, you can also get these to match all the way through. So the traffic door and the chute bolt handles actually come in a choice of grey, black, chrome, white and brushed stainless steel, which is what we've got here. Another unique feature of it, if you like, is that they've got this anti-backdrive feature, and the idea of that is that somebody can't get a spade or a jemmy underneath the door, force it up and force the locking mechanism to open up. And they also have a locking key so that you can secure it and make sure that everything is fully locked. And it's comforting to know that these Korniche doors do come with PAS 24 as standard. You don't have to order optional extra security, it's built into the door. Now these doors are very easy to fit, as you've seen in the video, but that doesn't mean that you can just not read the instructions and follow the video. You must read the instructions. I really have to emphasize that, because so often people embark on a job without fully understanding what's involved, get halfway through and realize they've done something wrong. So what I would always advise people to do is scan through those instructions first, give yourself an overview of the job in hand, and then read them thoroughly again before you start on the job, and then you could just follow them through as a step-by-step. But it's that familiarization with the product that is going to save you getting on the phone, ordering extra parts because you've done something wrong.